Hello and welcome to the ExJW podcast. I'm your host Riley, a former Jehovah's Witness who left the religion in 2019. Before we get into this week's episode, I just want to acknowledge the fact that it has been more than a few weeks since the last episode. However, there are some very good reasons for that, which I will elaborate on at the end of the podcast. So I recently had the great pleasure of speaking with Bethany Leger. Bethany is an author and a former Jehovah's Witness who was very influential on me personally when I was first waking up from my JW indoctrination. We had a really great conversation about our experiences both inside and outside of the organization, and this week's episode will be that conversation that we had. So here it is. I really hope you enjoy it. Hi, Beth. How are you?
I'm good, Riley. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. Thank you. Thank you so much for agreeing to be a guest on the podcast. I am truly honored, and I don't say that lightly. I really am, because when I started waking up, your channel was one of the first channels that I started watching, and I absolutely binged all of your videos. Stop the Shunning. I will never ever forget it. I particularly love the stories about your grandmother from Brooklyn.
Oh, my grandmother from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Super funny. It's very sweet.
Really funny.
That's very kind of you to say, Riley. Thank you.
I'm truly honored to have you on the podcast. Thank you.
I'm honored to be on your podcast, and the fact that you're contributing your voice and helping raise awareness about the Jehovah's Witnesses organization. I'm happy to be on here with you. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so how did you become a Jehovah's Witness?
Yeah, so my dad, my parents are both witnesses. They are still devout witnesses. My father served at Bethel at the Brooklyn headquarters. This is long before Warwick. So he served at Bethel in Brooklyn from the late 60s to early 70s. And then he became an elder very young. I think he was probably 22 or 23 when the arrangement was first instituted. And so he was a very young elder, and he was assigned to my mother's congregation in Brooklyn. And so that's how they met. And my mother was very devout. She was a pioneer. And they moved to Texas, where my father was originally from. So he took this spicy Brooklyn chick, my mother, and took her to Texas, and they got married in Texas, and they ended up moving to Dallas eventually. And that's where I was born. And my dad's side of the family, they're all witnesses. I don't know what's going on with them right now, but they're a smaller family, but they were very devout. My mother came from a much larger family. She was one of 7 kids. And I know that only one of her siblings stayed in the organization. So in other words, I have a lot of cousins and extended family who were never Jehovah's Witnesses on my mom's side. But yeah, so I was a born in, basically. Nobody came to my door. My parents were witnesses. I was raised as a witness from birth.
Right. And what eventually caused you to leave? How did you wake up? Take us through that process.
Okay. So, all right. So you and I both know, Martin, that it's never really just one thing. Mm-hmm. When you leave, maybe one thing finally gets you out the door. You finally leave. This was the straw. This was the last thing. But so to give you a quick answer, the main thing that led me to officially revoke my membership, because I didn't just fade, I disassociated. I sent in a letter and said, I don't want to be known as one of Jehovah's Witnesses anymore. Take me off your roster. This was December 31st, 2017. My husband and John and I, we both sent in our letters. That's our freedom-versary, is New Year's Eve.
Right.
So we disassociated. The thing that really finally was the last straw was their child sexual abuse cases. I had no idea because as witnesses, you hear like, a child sex abuse case or something. It's just a few bad apples. No. Jehovah's Witnesses have a chronic systemic child sexual abuse problem. And not only is this horrific, but it is wildly hypocritical, because I know, when I was growing up, in the 80s and 90s in the organization, we used to rail against the Catholic Church for their mishandling and child sexual abuse, and just railed against the Catholics just in general. But but that was so hypocritical and surprising to me, that you're going to badmouth the Catholics, and yet you guys are just as guilty of
if
the
not
same
worse.
thing. Yes. And so when I found out about the Australian Royal Commission, which I know a lot of people are familiar with now, but just in case somebody who's listening isn't familiar with this, the Australian Royal Commission found 1,006 cases of child sexual abuse in Australia from, I think it was like the 50s, for several decades. They found these cases were never reported to law enforcement of child sexual abuse. That's one little slice of the world. And yet, Watchtower, the Jehovah's Witnesses, have amassed this database of tens of thousands of predators, sexual predators and abusers that have never been reported to law enforcement. So that was definitely the thing that finally got me out. But I always had a lot of doubts, honestly. I would say there's two types of witnesses. There's the true blue believer who really truly believes it. They find joy in it. They're happy. And when they wake up and find out it's a cult, they are like, their world is shattered. Like, it's really, they really truly grieve. I always knew something was off. My intuition, my gut said something was wrong. But when you're a child, you can't articulate what that is. You don't know what's going on. You're too young. So I was never happy as a witness, but it was like, where am I to go to, Lord? It's the truth. We're told it's the truth our whole life. So, and you're not taught critical thinking or anything like that. So I thought it was the truth, but it was an obligation. It was not a joy. So for me leaving and finding out about these things, it confirmed my suspicions, if that makes sense. So, but the child sexual abuse cases, that just, I was like, I'm definitely not, I can't hang with this. I cannot align myself with this organization anymore. So that's really what caused me to leave ultimately.
It's interesting when you spoke about the two different types of Jehovah's Witness. I was the first type. I was a true believer.
Really?
Through and through. True believer. 100%. Okay. Over the years, particularly in my adulthood, I mean, I never had any doubts as a child or an adolescent. There were times where I went through rough patches where I found it difficult to live up to the lifestyle. But I never had any doubts that it was the truth.
Right.
I started having misgivings, I'd say, in my mid to late 30s. But I wouldn't quite call them doubts.
Understood.
I had reservations about the way certain things are done in the organization and whether or not certain things made practical sense.
Right.
But I never doubted that Jehovah was real and that he really was supporting the governing body who was leading the organization. Those things were unshakable to me.
Interesting. No, thank you for sharing that, because I was the opposite. I thought it was the truth, and yet at the same time, it felt very far-fetched to me. The whole paradise concept and it just I echo a lot of your sentiments, but it is funny how we were in different camps or categories,
Yeah. So how did you initially wake up, and how did you learn about the child sexual abuse cases and all those things?
Right. So I had heard things over the years, but of course that's apostate lies. And I would see, as a little girl going to the convention, I'd see the protesters outside the convention with holding up the signs and that kind of thing. And you don't understand it, and it's shut down immediately. You don't look at them, you don't talk to them, that kind of thing. But as an adult, I mean, I officially woke up when I was 30 or 31. And I finally allowed myself to go online. No, actually, it's kind of a combination. It's not a perfect linear experience. There were a couple of things going through my mind. I had my doubts. I was dealing with severe anxiety and depression. And I noticed I felt better when I was away from the Kingdom Hall. Every time I was at the Kingdom Hall. So this is probably a really long answer to your question, but something that always bothered me was when they used the word selfish. So I remember the very last, that was always a very triggering word for me throughout my entire life. In fact, when I was in high school, I wrote an essay in my English class, and I made some troubling remarks in that essay because I was a teenager, and I said some things that probably disturbed my English teacher. And she took it to the school counselor, and the school counselor had a little chat with me. And she says, Bethany, I noticed several times in this essay, you mentioned the word selfish. Can you explain that to me? And I burst into tears and I was choking and sobbing. And she had me read, and I had to explain to her, like, how do I break this down to this nice worldly lady that my religion's killing me inside? And that I feel like I'm selfish for wanting to go to college and leave the organization. And I have all these doubts. So she cracked open the dictionary and she says, I want you to read the word selfish out loud for me. And so I did, and I could barely choke out the words. And she says, Bethany, it doesn't sound like you have a complete, utter lack of consideration for other people. It seems like you have more than enough. That was a turning point as a young, and mind you, I didn't wake up as a young person, but I thought, that's true. I'm thinking about everybody else but myself. What do I want? I'm worried constantly about other people's feelings, but they don't care about how I feel. It's all about control and falling into line. So basically, fast forward, the last meeting that I went to, the circuit overseer, and I didn't know this person because we were in a new congregation at the time, John and I. The circuit overseer stands on the stage and he basically says, hey friends, a lot of talking to us like we're toddlers, a lot of us, we're hearing that a lot of the friends are suffering from depression. Isn't that sad? And Jehovah consoles, those who are down and depressed or whatever. But then what he said was, this is the part, you want to know what just absolutely made me snap and go red? He says, let's turn to this scripture. He says, the one seeking his own selfish advantage. So that one himself is seeking his own self-advantage. So he says to the audience, he looks the audience in the eye and he says, so if you're suffering from depression, be here in Jehovah's organization. Don't stay home and be selfish. So that was just wild to me that he's telling depressed people or people who are dealing with mood disorders or having mental health struggles or whatever, chemical or organization-induced depression, just don't be selfish. I'd heard that word my whole life. It was a trigger word, a buzzword that the organization uses. It was like I had an out-of-body experience. I floated out of that Kingdom Hall, never went back. That was the last meeting I ever went to. I could never step foot in a Kingdom Hall ever again. So long story long, that's what kickstarted everything. And then I found the book, Combating Cult Mind Control by Dr. Stephen Hassan. And he, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know I forget if he's a doctor. Actually, I think he is. But anyways, Stephen Hassan is a cult. Okay. Stephen Hassan is a cult expert, and his book, Combating Cult Mind Control, he came up with the BITE model, which stands for Behavioral, Information, Thought, and Emotion Control. And he's saying, whatever group you're a part of, whether it's religious, political, self-help, or whatever, if they're hitting all these bullet points, it was 4 quadrants. If it's hitting all these bullet points, you're probably in a cult. And so it wasn't even the big bad apostates on the internet that woke me up at first. It was looking at the BITE model. I said, holy shit, the witnesses are hitting almost every single bullet point. This guy has no skin in the game. This is not an apostate. He's not a former witness. This is just objective criteria that's telling me I'm in a cult. So I had to process all that. And then I started digging, and then I found the YouTube, ex-Jehovah's Witness community. And I was very inspired by that, by several activists and their bravery. And so that was it. And then when I heard about the Australian Royal Commission and started digging deeper into that and the database that the organization refuses to hand over, that was the final thing.
Wow.
That was the final thing that made me say I absolutely cannot be a part of this anymore. I mean, I wasn't happy anyways, but when I heard that, I was like, oh, you guys are raging hypocrites. I can't be part of this organization.
There is so much of what you said that resonates with me. When you were speaking about your trigger words, I had a trigger word for years, but I didn't have the vocabulary to express what that was. But for me, it was the word endurance.
Oh,
I hated,
yes.
I grew to loathe that
Yes.
word endurance,
They
because
love that word.
to, to me, it was just an excuse for not wanting to improve one's own circumstances.
Yes.
Like if you're going through something really difficult and you just want it to end so that you can stop being miserable,
Yes.
they'll just say, just endure, just endure. And that made no sense to me.
Right.
And repeatedly, I remember conversation after conversation after conversation with the elders, and they're just telling me, endure, endure, endure. And I'm like, why? Why must I endure? I've got this really difficult situation that I want to end so that I can be happy and move on. And you're telling me that I'm being selfish for wanting that to change.
You see what I'm
It's
saying?
like,
You're being selfish.
yeah. And I
It's
just, I
crazy.
just didn't get it. They made me feel like there was something wrong with me for thinking
Right.
that way.
Right. Yeah, and that's what
You
cults
know?
do. It's you. You're the problem. You're not doing it
Yeah.
hard enough, good enough. You're not. Yeah, I'm so sorry. Yeah, endurance was definitely. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. That word and encouragement. That was another
Yes.
of
Yeah.
mine. In fact, for years after leaving the organization, I literally could not utter the word. I couldn't. I pulled out a thesaurus. Because I thought encouragement was manipulation and guilting and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with actually, well, what do you need? What are your needs? What do you actually need, Bethany, in this moment? That's encouragement, or you're doing a good job or you're trying. No, it's like, well, what can we do to get you back in line? That's
Exactly.
encouragement in Jehovah's
Yeah.
Witnesses. So yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's interesting. Endurance. Well, you don't have to worry
Yeah.
about that anymore.
I absolutely hated it. I mean, when I look back on it now, it's really sad. But there was a sister in my congregation that I was really close to. She was like surrogate mum to me. I mean, I
Right.
had a mum in the organization, but she was a mum of one of my best friends, and we became really close. But she had a long-term illness
Mm,
that she had to have ongoing treatment for. And I remember her offering a comment at the meeting saying that if you're going through difficult circumstances, you should pray to Jehovah for the strength to endure the circumstance, but not pray for it to end.
right.
And I think it's so sad that somebody who's suffering from a chronic illness has that mindset, that
Yes.
it's wrong for them to
To want
to
it to just end.
it to just end.
And what does that say about
That's
them? Yeah, exactly. So
exactly, exactly. That's what the cults do to you. They control your mind to the point where you think illogically.
right.
It's not logical to be going through hard times and think that it's okay for hard times to continue,
Exactly. No,
even
no,
if
no.
it's out of your control to change the circumstance. There's nothing wrong with wanting the circumstance to change.
Yes, yes. No, no, but you can't have that. That's too reasonable. You have to just keep enduring. And what does
Yeah,
that say about you if you give up? You know?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's
exactly.
really sad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
ab-
really is, and it just shows how manipulative the organization is.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And just kind of as a side note, I think it's funny how no, not funny, not ha ha funny, but I when I was growing up, I would hear things like, the world and the churches say that God works in mysterious ways and they run off of emotion, but we have, logic and understanding the Bible. And what does the Bible say? We can explain everything. But I'm seeing the complete opposite now. You watch a JW video, I mean, it's just sheer theater and playing on emotions. They're doing literally the thing that they said they would never do. I mean, we can talk about that. That's a whole other thing, but
Yeah,
yeah, I'm very extremely emotionally manipulative to keep
Ab-
people in.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think the two of us are of a similar age, and I remember in the 80s and the 90s, the religion seemed so much more studious back then.
Yeah,
Everything was about learning and making sense of the scriptures and intellectual reasoning. And I mean, the reasoning was all flawed because it was based on flawed
right.
information and a very restricted set of facts, right?
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
it was flawed because of that. But within that bubble, everything had to make sense. But I've seen a huge shift away from that now. It's not about reasoning or any, there's the intellectual side of the religion seems to have completely gone. It's all about how you feel.
Yes, and exactly. And to your point, even if they were wrong, at least there was an authenticity
Yeah.
to their pursuit of, quote, truth. Whereas now it's like, we're going to make this really bite-sized, easily digestible. You don't have to think. Just look at the crying sister on the screen. Look at the fancy drama that we created over here at Ramapo at our, multi-billion-dollar, whatever, media center. Yeah, you're right. They just really took that whole, it's completely different than the religion, not completely different, but is changed very much so from the 80s and 90s. Absolutely. And I know we're not the only ones. I've heard that from a lot of people. Yeah.
What do you think about how much the religion has changed? In particular, the recent changes like beards and sisters wearing pants. And
I mean, you're late to the party.
Yeah.
you're late to the party. How about you stop funning people? Like, you got bigger fish to fry. I mean, good. You should be, let them grow their own facial hair. Yeah. It's just ridiculous. It's all cosmetic because they were bleeding numbers. And cosmetic, I don't mean just because of the beards, but like, this is insane. Oh God, he created you. Yeah, he created me with facial hair. And now you're giving me permission to have a beard. This is insanity. And sisters wearing pants or whatever. So, I mean, that's great. Okay, fine. And what else do you teach? What other craziness are you teaching behind closed doors? There's got to be more. There's got to be bigger changes. A little late to the party, but hey, great that sisters can wear pants, and but the thing is, they're being given it's adults being given permission by other adults. It's not really a win. It's not really a win because you had to wait for permission from the governing body to wear pants and grow your beard.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like, whatever So
yeah, that's the irony. I mean, you
yes.
Where I live, there's a little square downstairs, and we often see cart witness in there.
Oh yes,
and
yes.
Every single brother that I've seen there has had a beard.
Mm-hmm.
I know for a fact that I could go and approach one of those brothers, speak to them, and they would say, I could bring up the beard subject, and they would say in response that they don't follow men. But there you are with a beard on your face, and the only reason you have it is because another man said you're allowed to.
Yes, exactly. And really, what happened to being separate from the world? Now you just look like Baptist church.
Yeah, exactly.
You could belong to anybody now. I mean, really, I don't engage with any of them, but when I see them too, sitting at a restaurant, I almost want to just go up and be like, hey, this guys just kind of, are you Jehovah's Witnesses? I couldn't tell. oh, you're witnesses. Oh, hey guys, you're witnesses. That's great. I'm sorry. Because of the beards and the pants, I couldn't tell if you were Jehovah's people anymore. They were so self-righteous about that for years. We remain separate from the world. They can tell by our dress and grooming. Well, now you just look like everybody else. So, I mean, like, okay, whatever. It's a win, but not really. It's just a cosmetic change.
Exactly.
So, I'm with you on that.
The way I feel about these changes is that it's kind of confirmed to me that the governing body, on some level, don't really believe what they're preaching. I mean, I'm not saying that every single member of the governing body is basically just a con artist. I'm not saying that, but I think on some level they either don't believe that it's the truth, or they don't believe that Jehovah is still backing them. And the reason I say that is because I remember watching that Faith in Action video in the 90s. Remember that one? It was like a two-part video. No, not Faith in Action, or was it the organization behind the name?
Yes, the organization behind the name. Yes.
I remember watching that and seeing Jeffrey Jackson speaking about the elder arrangement and when it was first instituted, and how there was a lot of pushback from the congregations.
Right.
Because of the qualifications that you'd need to have to be an elder. You'd have to be faithful to your wife, and you have to be a non-smoker. and people were saying, you are never going to find brothers. You are
Yeah,
never going to find brothers who are qualified to be an elder if that's the criteria.
right.
But Jeffrey Jackson said something very interesting. He said, it doesn't matter. He said,
Ah.
remember, only 8 people survived the flood out of a world of however many thousands. And he said that Jehovah has never really been overly concerned about numbers. But here the governing body is making all of these changes because of numbers.
Because of numbers. Oh, it's, yeah.
So that, to me, that signifies that they either don't believe it's the truth or they don't believe that Jehovah is with them anymore. Because
Right.
they're doing exactly what every other religion does to keep their numbers up.
Yes, exactly.
Capitulate,
yes.
capitulate, follow, base their principles on the changing times and the
Right.
consensus of the world in general. That's what every other religion does.
Right. I mean, one of the biggest examples of that was, well, not just the beards and the pants, because, like every other religion allows that, or most, I should say. But they used another thing they railed against, televangelism. I mean,
Yes.
hello. Then you get Stephen Lett, fast forward a couple of decades, you get Stephen Lett on JW Broadcasting saying we need your money, there's more money going out than there is, coming in, and, fleecing the flock. They're hypocrites.
Yeah.
So, it's just, it's the hypocrisy and the changes that's just mind blowing. But yeah, they're doing whatever they have to do to stay afloat, because they're becoming more and more irrelevant as people gain access to information and, social media and things like that. They're scrambling. They're really scrambling. And that's why I don't believe, I recently did a video on my channel, Stop the Shunning. I did a video about fudged numbers, because I don't believe any number they put out. They lie about so many other things. Why should I believe that, their numbers have increased and we're doing so good in this country, and we're, all these people got baptized, and they're just, I'm with you on that one, Riley. It's, they're doing what they have to do to remain relevant and, to witness and keep witnesses and to stop the bleeding, basically.
Exactly. And I think that's why they've relaxed the rules for reinstatement as well.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
They're aggressively pursuing disfellowship people, trying to get them back in.
Exactly.
I've heard many stories of people who have been away from the organization for decades, and out of the blue, in the past few weeks, they're getting texts,
phone call or text message.
Yeah. It's all about the numbers.
It's all about the numbers. Yeah, they were absolutely bleeding in the last 5 years. And so, like you said, aggressively pursuing inactive people, disfellowshipped people. But anybody who's really vocal and speaking out, like you and I, we're really dead.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We'll never get a text or phone call.
We're like we're the dogs that have returned to their own vomit.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, one prediction I have,
yes,
maybe a controversial prediction.
Mm-hmm.
I think that at some point, I mean, of course, I'm not 100% sure, but I think that possibly at some point they might start encouraging people to have larger families, because the only hope the religion has of growing is from children, because people aren't coming into the religion from the ministry.
No.
You can only reinstate many. You can only reinstate so many disfellowshipped ones. Any hope of future growth they have will come from inside.
I agree.
2 in 3 children born in a religion leave by the time they're adults.
Yeah, according to the Pew Research Foundation. Yeah, exactly. That's how many leave. Yes.
Exactly. So if people have more children, then that's, comparatively a larger number of children that will stay in.
Yes. And they're going to have to change. They're going to have to change several things if that's the case, because you're bringing up the TikTok generation, and, children are, by the time they open their eyes in the world, they have a cell phone in front of them. So they're going to have to make some serious changes. But yes, I absolutely agree. And that would be a huge jump from the line they used to have back in the 70s. The whole 75 debacle about, stay alive till 75, don't have kids, sell your car, quit your job because the end's coming.
Armageddon's just around the corner.
Yes, exactly. And of course we know that that was a massive failure and people got hip to them and they stopped doing that. They kind of, they try to still pull that kind of, but they never really put it on record. But yeah, no, absolutely. I do think that might very well be a thing that they start pushing. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey, if sisters can, earn the right from a man to wear pants, anything's possible. Possible by Jehovah's hand.
Yeah, exactly. What would you change if you could change anything in the organization? What would that be?
A few things that come to mind. Well, first of all, stop the shunning. Hello.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously, stop it. It's destructive. People are killing themselves over it. They're developing depression. It's sick. It's sadistic. And also, a lot of times, it's backfiring. So you'll have people say, you know what? You're really toxic and screwed up. This is messed up. I'm glad you're out of my life. Fine. You're going to shun me. I'll shun you back. So it's destructive. It oftentimes doesn't work. And quite frankly, if you just took that threat away from people, it's like an abusive relationship. Do you want that person with you because they really love you? Of course not. It's about control and fear. You want that person to stay with you because they actually love you. Why not just take the shunning threat away? And then let's be real, Riley, a lot of people would leave. Yes, a lot of people would leave if they lifted the shunning policy. However, I do believe a core base would stay because they really truly do believe in the tenets of the organization. They enjoy the community. They have love and friendship there. They believe in paradise. And, they want equality and justice for all. Well, you know what I mean? Like they want paradise on earth. That's not a bad thing. But yeah, the whole shunning thing, get rid of that. And I believe that there will be people who actually are authentically there, not because they're afraid of losing their families and they're physically in, but really mentally out. Okay. So get rid of shunning. I would say do not allow people to get baptized under the age of 25 to 30. I'm not a scientist, do your research or whatever, but the consensus is 25 to 30, you are fully developed. The brain is fully developed. Whatever. Even if you're 21, drinking age, don't allow anyone under the age of 21 to get baptized. I said this in my first book, Physically In, Mentally Out, Navigating Your Exit from Watchtower. I talk about this. Minors are not allowed to drink, vote, drive, or get married, but they are going to be pressured and coerced into committing themselves to a religious ideology for the rest of their life. And not dissimilar from youths in Scientology who you have to sign a billion-year contract to work on the literal mothership.
Yeah.
Scientology. Stop baptizing minors. That's abusive. It's coercive. It's, you want to look up, if anybody wants to look up undue influence and study undue influence from Stephen Hassan, it's undue influence. The kid has heard their whole life, they're going to die at Armageddon. Jehovah will hate them. All that fear mongering if they don't get baptized. They're even saying in their literature, the only way to survive the end of this system of things is to be baptized, to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses. They started saying that a few years back. I can't specify exactly which article it was, but they did put that in print and a lot of their broadcasts. So stop the fear mongering and forcing minors or pressuring minors, because it is pressure. It is. They're afraid they're going to die at Armageddon. And then all their little friends are being pressured by their parents to get baptized. So, you got Johnny over here getting baptized, Casey. Well, what's wrong with your kid? That, brother so-and-so, sister so-and-so, what's wrong with Bethany? Why doesn't she want to get baptized? Why is she 18 and still not baptized? You know that. There's always been pressure. There would be packs of 15 and 16-year-olds that get baptized at the same time. And that's late. Now they're like baptizing 8 and 9-year-olds. Another thing they used to rail against the Catholic Church for.
Child baptism.
child
Infant.
baptism.
Yeah.
Or a child at 8 years old. And frankly, you don't know yourself, even sometimes at 18, 19, 21, your views could change. A lot of people say, thank God I'm 40. Thank God I'm in my 50s, because in my 20s, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So that would be the second thing I change. Do not allow anyone I kid you not, no one under the age of 21 to get baptized. If you can handle a mortgage, menopause, or whatever else, and choose, who you want to spend the rest of your life with, or make these major decisions, then you can convert or commit yourself to, this religion. Fine, no problem, but nobody under that age. And then the third thing I would say, just kind of off the top of my head, would be to have some kind of programs for your own. Like, we're not supposed to go to the outside world for anything. So, have a food pantry, have Sunday school, or what I'm saying is have a program for the kids. I do not want to see 4 and 5-year-olds sitting in the auditorium with their parents listening about sexual immorality and fornication and adultery. Do not expose children to things that they are not prepared developmentally to process. So have some kind of really make it fun for them. If you don't want the Kingdom Hall to become like a playground, where they're just playing, they go off in another room and play. Well, then make it fun. We're going to learn about Jehovah. Here's some colorful puppets. Here's crayons. We'll learn from the Great Teacher book. Let's learn from the Great Teacher, and we're going to color something. You have to match your audience, what you're dealing with. And I just, I'm not the only one. There's so many people who had nightmares from the Bible storybook. My book of Bible.
Absolutely. I was one of them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, don't expose kids to that, and I would, say, if people, single parent families, people who are struggling in the congregation, don't just leave it up to people in the congregation. Meaning my mother, she's a very compassionate woman. I did not grow up rich. We were not poor, but we were not rich by any means. And whatever 2 cents my mom had, if, they say look after the widows and orphans, that's exactly what my mom did. If someone was sick, she was chopping onions and carrots and making soup and was at their doorstep. If somebody's kid needed shoes, she bought them shoes. But it was always left up to, you know what I'm saying, just left up to people in the congregation. And it's like, well, we haven't seen this family, this fringe family who sits on the back row. We haven't seen them in a while. Well, who's taking care of them? Who's looking after them? Are you? So have some kind of program, have a food pantry, have some kind of, sisters looking after sisters or something like that. Take a page from Christendom.
Yeah.
They're retaining numbers better than you are. So, just if you're not going to help and be charitable to the outside world because they're doomed for destruction, at least help your own a little bit better. Jehovah's Witnesses have the resources, and I'm talking about the higher ups. The governing body, eat like kings, okay? They have the money, they have the resources, so I would say develop some kind of programs. You don't want your teenagers out fornicating or whatever. Well, first of all, if they're going to do that, they're going to do it anyway. But why don't you have teen programs? They can't do extracurricular activities at school because it's bad association. Start, Jehovah's Witness, whatever, football camp where you learn about Jehovah and you get to, you're going through puberty, your hormones are a effing roller coaster. Put the boys outside in the back in the field and let them play football. They're more likely to stay in the religion if they feel supported in other aspects of their life. We're not just spiritual people. We're physical, emotional, mental people. So I would just say support them as humans and not just keep shoving cult rhetoric and just think that spirituality is the only thing. You need other things. Kids need to run around. They need to play. They need to, things like that. And people need food. They need practical things. So,
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, take a leaf out of Christendom's book. They do things practically to help their own, and that's from the top down. It's not just left to individual members in the congregation.
Right. And bless those people who help, but, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I've been in situations where people in the congregation have rallied around and, helped with circumstances that I or my family were going through. And I really appreciated that. But it's left to the individuals. There's no structured way to do anything like that.
No initiatives, program. Yeah.
No, because the organization hoards all of its resources for itself. They couldn't care less about the individual members on the ground.
Exactly. They don't care about the rank style.
They don't.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. No, they don't.
Yeah, they don't at all. And that's one thing that really, when I came to see it for what it was, that's one thing that really, bothered me. That, the organization is run that way. It's not love, and they claim to be so much better than Christendom. Yeah. Churches have soup kitchens to feed the homeless and the poor.
And they don't even care if you go to that church. They're just feeding the community. I'm not even saying that you have to care about the outside world. At least care for your own.
Yeah, exactly. One of my ExJW friends on TikTok, she made a TikTok a while back speaking about when she left the organization. She felt that there was a spiritual void and she was trying to fill it. So she visited other churches. Right. And she went to one church in her town, and they routinely leave the doors open at night. So she said to the pastor, "Why do you leave the doors open?" She goes, "Oh, because there's a lot of," first of all, the pastor was a woman. Which you would not find in the organization. Of course.
Hell
no. So the pastor said to her, "Oh, it's because there's a lot of homeless people in the area. So we leave the doors open so that they could sleep inside and shelter from the rain."
Oh, how lovely. Yeah.
And my friend, she was just astounded. She was just astounded because you would never, ever find an elder in the Kingdom Hall that would do or say something like that.
Riley, I've literally seen, back when I was a witness, I would see a sister from my car group out in service in the public ministry would take magazines to someone sitting on the sidewalk who was homeless and say, I'm gonna go give a magazine. That's what he needs. Yep, because they're so nutritious and it's gonna keep him warm.
Yeah.
What is wrong with you?
Yeah, and I find that especially distasteful because when I left the organization, I was actually homeless for a while.
Really?
Yeah, I was homeless for 2 months, and I know that's not an awfully long time.
No, that's enough.
It was long enough. It was long enough for me to realize how challenging it is. I mean, the word challenging is an understatement, but I just can't think of a better one at the moment. But it was long enough for me to realize how hard homeless people have it. And not just how hard they have it, how it's wrong to judge homeless people because it can happen to anyone.
You don't know what's happening.
Exactly. You don't know what events has led them to where they are now. You can't just write them all off as being lazy or being social outcasts or being people, they're protesting against society, or you just don't know.
No, you don't know. No, it's the homeless issue in America. There's no mental health services to help these individuals. And I'm very sorry to hear that. And you have demonstrated incredible resilience and bravery, and man, kudos to you. You are a brave example, Riley. Thank you for sharing that.
No, thank you. I don't see myself that way. I kind of feel like I just limp from one disaster to another.
But somebody may be going through similar circumstances or be able to relate to your circumstances or whatever happened to you, and whatever events led up to that, and will appreciate hearing your story. And then you don't know how you're going to affect that person and change that person's life. So don't discount the good that you've done.
Thank you. So being raised as a witness, as we both were, I know that there are certain things both in my personality and in the way that I do things that are kind of like vestiges of my JW past. Is there anything like that for you?
Um, not not so much now, but when I first left, definitely I I had the erroneous belief that I could just toss a bunch of toss a bunch of people in a room and we'd be friends. I mean, because
Mm.
when you're a Jehovah's Witness, it's like, oh, we all serve the same God. It's the same mission. It's kind of like this. I don't mean this to sound disparaging, but I have this analogy in mind of like it's almost like tossing a bunch of toddlers in a sandbox. You're just friends now.
Yeah.
You're just all going to play together. That's kind of like what it is with a cult. You don't
Mm.
really, you don't know them really on any kind of deeper level. It's just very surface. Oh, you're a Jehovah's Witness. Are you in the cult? I'm in the cult. Cool. Good. We're instant friends. And then you leave and you're like, you know what? I never really liked that guy.
Yeah.
Never really liked that sister. Thank God I don't have to see her stupid face anymore. So, but when you leave, I guess to answer your question, when I left, I was optimistic, and I don't think you should be pessimistic because nothing good comes out of that. You can be cautious, but to be pessimistic and isolate yourself, I mean, really nothing good is going to come out of that. You're going to have to be a little bit vulnerable and put yourself out there to meet people. But it's definitely, you're not in a cult anymore. So friendships take time. And I think right out the gate, I was overly optimistic of just like, I'm free. I'm not in the cult anymore. So I can hang out with whoever I want to. I can talk to whoever I want to, which is true. But that doesn't mean that every interaction is going to blossom into a lifelong, equitable, fun, whatever, substantial friendship. And very much so, you're going to find the opposite. You're going to be like, oh, we hit it off kind of at first, but now I find out we have very different beliefs and maybe we're not really going to be friends. And it's never really anybody's fault. That's just life.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll just have friends for a season. They pass in and out. So carrying that kind of naive idea that I was just going to be like, oh, just, everybody's just going to get along. And no, it takes time to develop friendships, and you're going to change. And I think one time I even said something like, I said this in a video, even when I first started doing Stop the Shunning back in 2018, I said something in a video like, don't worry, you're going to find your tribe. And what I meant by that was, I meant you're going to find people who are like-minded. You'll find community. I didn't mean like the intention was good. It wasn't like, oh, just hop into a new cult or,
Mm.
Be quick to pick a team or be, so quick about things. It's going to take time. There's a whole process when you're waking up and you're leaving. And I definitely think it's better to be optimistic and to try to meet people and put yourself out there. You're just going to have to do that at some point, but it's not a race. I think it was pretty fast at first, that
Yeah.
I was just trying to apply that same template of like, I'll just meet a bunch of people and it's going to be all good. Nah, it's welcome to the real world, jackass.
Yes.
You're gonna meet cool people. Let me be straight about that. You're gonna meet cool people, but you are gonna have to sift through. People are not gonna like you. You're not gonna like some people. So it is what it is. But you will make friends. It's just gonna take some time. And I think I was very naive in the beginning about that.
Yeah, I can relate to a lot of that. I was exactly the same. I think my expectations were a little bit too high when it came to, making friends and meeting new people. And looking back now, I can see how that was off-putting to some people that I interacted with.
Yes.
I've come a long way from there, but I can definitely see that I was very much like that.
Right. The
Very much
expectation
like that.
a little too
Yeah.
high.
Making friends is a skill. And
It
it's a
is.
skill that you're not afforded the opportunity to learn as a Jehovah's Witness because you're just instant friends with the kids in your congregation or the kids that
Right.
share the same hall, the kids in your circuit. So you don't have to learn that skill.
Right.
You
Right,
completely
exactly.
bypass it. So if you leave the organization as an adult and now you're in a situation where you need to make friends, you don't know how. You go about it the wrong way and you make mistakes and you repel people even.
Right,
you know
exactly. I think, yes, exactly. I agree. And there was a former Jehovah's Witness that I met when I first left, brilliant woman. And she says, she says, I call it just add water, friends. That's how it is in the organization. Just add water and you have an instant chicken dinner, like,
Yeah.
like, oh, you're a witness? Great. We're automatically brothers and sisters. Nah, like you gotta like you said, it's a skill you develop and you got to step back and take your time with friendships. Don't push things and let things develop naturally. And some whatever's meant to happen, really. And that sounds cliche, but if it's the right person that needs to be in your life, cool. And if not, that's not.
Yeah.
And there you go.
Yeah, I can completely agree. I mean, when you were saying about how you're instant friends with people, but when you leave, you think to yourself, I never really liked them anyway. I mean, when I was a JW, I had a wide circle of friends. Okay. But if every single one of them were to wake up all at the same time and get in contact with me now, I can count on one hand how many I would genuinely want to keep in contact with.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's nobody's fault. It's just what we were, that's just who we were. That was the circumstances we found ourselves in. And, yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's people, even when I left, I started an ex-Jehovah's Witness meetup in the area. And, some people are against that idea, and whatever you want to do is fine. But I started one. It was really successful. A lot of people came, new friends were made. We had a lot of fun, a lot of laughs. And some people were kind of toxic. And then, it's like, okay, that's the point. Just because we're former Jehovah's Witnesses doesn't mean that, oh no, like, yeah, we find camaraderie and we can share stories and we understand each other because of what we came from. But, you're going to go separate ways. You're going to find out that's okay. We don't have to stick together because of our trauma. A friendship should not be solely based on a trauma bond. So it's okay if you lose touch with somebody or you guys don't stay in touch. It's not a slam on either side. It's just, you're just moving on with life. Sometimes it's just friends for a season and then you move on.
Yeah, exactly. And that's okay.
And it's okay the other way too. Maybe you do stay friends with some of those people, And so there's people that I know that have, they woke up. Some are still in for various reasons, but we stay in touch. And there's people who left and we still stay in touch. And then there's people in the middle where we had fun, we had a few laughs, and then they're doing well. They're off doing their thing now. So.
Yeah. Would you say that you've changed at all since leaving? And if so, how? What would you say is the biggest way that you've changed?
That's a good one. I am much faster, if that's grammatically correct. I'm faster. I'm faster to enforce my boundaries. Let me put it that way.
Right.
Because when you're in the organization, you're taught to be a people pleaser. Pleasing the right kind of people, Jehovah's people. You're taught to be a people pleaser. You have to forgive, everybody get along. We're all brothers and sisters. You put up with a lot of shit. Excuse me, I don't know if I can say that, but you do. You put up with a lot. Okay. You put up with a lot because you guys all have to be stuck in the same cult together. Now, I'm not in a cult anymore. I don't have to put up with your crap. So how do I say this? I'm generally friendly. I get along with a rock, Riley. I get along with anybody. Unless you give me reason to not be friendly with you, or if you give me reason to not trust you anymore, then we have a problem. But I don't go in hot. I don't go in antagonistic or aggressive. I get along with most people. But if you start disrespecting my boundaries or just being openly antagonistic or shitty, I don't need that in my life. I'm not going to put up with abuse. So I'm much faster to set boundaries and not put up with stuff. I don't care if you like me. My own parents don't speak to me. Who are you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the biggest way. Not being quick to make sure I'm liked by everybody and make sure I'm pleasing everybody. You can't please everybody, nor should you.
Yeah. I think I've changed a lot in a lot of ways. I think the biggest way that I've changed is trying not to be so judgmental. When I look back to how I was as a JW, I was so judgmental. even for a JW, I was like on the extreme end of judgment.
You got the gold. You were the gold standard for.
Yeah. But if you had asked me at the time if I was a judgmental person, I probably would have said, "Judgment? How? How am I judgmental? How?
Yes.
I wouldn't have thought that at all." But looking back, I could see I was really judgmental as a JW. But now I recognize that.
You got to cut yourself some slack, though, because we were taught to be judgmental and arrogant. I don't believe at your core you were judgmental. We were taught to be judgmental and arrogant and morally superior. And then when you leave, you're like, oh my God, it was horrible. But that's just that was just very on brand for being a Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Oh, cut yourself some slack there, really.
Yeah. Now I just think to myself, live and let live. Let people do what they want to do. Let them be who they want to be. As long as what they're doing or who they're being doesn't hurt anybody, then why should I have with it?
Exactly. I tend to agree with that. Absolutely. You do you, I'll do me. Just, yeah, exactly. You do your thing, I'll do my thing. And as long as you're not hurting anybody. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Would you say that you're happier now? I mean, it might seem like an obvious question, but would you say that you're happier now outside of the organization?
Oh my God, there's not even a comparison. It's almost as if I was never in the organization. Really, truly, it's almost like it was a really bad dream. And I know yes, to answer your question, yes, life is amazing now that I've left. I'm free to be myself. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Yeah, you're free to be yourself. And you're going to find people who still disagree with you that are not witnesses, has nothing to do with that. You're still going to have challenges, and that's just life. You have good days, bad days. It's not like everything's going to be perfect moving forward, but absolutely the organization made everything absolutely worse. So being out of the organization, life is rainbows and cupcakes compared to still being in the organization. Absolutely.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think that
the worst day as a quote worldly person is 1,000 times better than being trapped in the Jehovah's Witnesses, where I'm not allowed to think for myself. I have to follow the governing body blindly. I have to live a very inauthentic existence. I would rather have a rough time, have a bad day, and things are realistic, but I still have, my ability to think critically, my freedom. I can still just be myself and just live life and breathe, than have to be under constant surveillance and stress and make sure I'm doing everything perfectly, in the midst of going to work and bills. And it's like you get to just be a human when you're outside the organization. I'm not saying life is perfect, but at least you just get to finally breathe and just be honest about the fact that you're human and you're having a crappy day or whatever things. You get to be real about it instead of, oh, I'm a Jehovah's Witness, I cope with things so much better because I'm a Jehovah's Witness. No, being a Jehovah's Witness absolutely added to my stress and anxiety.
Yeah.
That's me personally. Again, there's some people who might find real joy being a witness, and when they wake up and find out it's a cult, it really is a grieving period for them. I didn't go through that grieving period. I said, oh, yeah, of course they're a cult. I should have known, but now it's official. I have it in my brain. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's official. Like, I have no doubt about that. And so now I can just be human and just deal with life without trying to act like I'm doing so well because I'm a witness and creating more problems for myself because I'm a witness. They create a lot of their own problems, a lot of their own stress. So there's a disingenuous factor to the whole witness thing. It's like, quit acting like you handle things so much better. Quite frankly, there were things in my family life growing up that were made worse by the fact that we were witnesses. I would have had more respect for my parents and my family had they just said, you know what, we're just human. We're just dealing with this crap. We have our flaws. No problem. I would have respected them and loved them for that, as opposed to we have our crap and our flaws, but we're going to hide it and put on suits and Bibles in our arm and go to the Kingdom Hall and smile and act happy and act like nothing's going on.
Yeah.
That's what I have, the inauthenticity and BS. That's what I have a problem with. I'm not saying life is perfect when you leave, but it's a hell of a lot better than being trapped in that in the organization.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, sometimes life feels like you're just swimming upstream. But being a Jehovah's Witness, it's like swimming upstream with rocks in your pocket.
Okay,
You know,
you said it far more eloquently than I did. You just
and that,
nailed it. You just nailed it. You just nailed it right there. Yes, absolutely.
it's just that's the feeling I got when I left, and not immediately after leaving, because I did go through that grieving process. But once I realized what life and the world actually have to offer, and I genuinely started living, that's when I felt so unencumbered.
Oh,
I
good.
just
Yes.
felt unencumbered, and I felt like difficult things. I know there's life is still going to contain difficult circumstances, but I feel
Right.
so much better, so much more able to deal with them now,
Yes.
that I'm not weighed down with having to go to the meetings and having to study for the meetings and have to preparing for family worship and having to go on a ministry and, have to keep this appearance of being, happy all the time and all of that, you
Yes.
know.
You mean you don't have to keep enduring
Oh,
in the midst of just everyday life? Everyday life is tiring enough, but then you're going to pile
exactly.
on all these Jehovah's Witness expectations and then gaslight me and tell me, "Oh, you just have to endure these things from Satan." Whatever. You just have bills and laundry. That's just life. And you're going to have interpersonal conflicts and stuff. But to tell me like, oh, this is just all Satan. No, I'm just exhausted because I don't want to go out and I've been going out in service however many days in a row. I'm sleep deprived because of the meetings and the conventions and the nonstop hamster wheel. Stop gaslighting me. So absolutely, I agree. It is like swimming
Yeah,
upstream, rocks in your pockets. Yep.
yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why the organization lost so many members during COVID, because they
Ah,
finally got off that hamster wheel.
yes.
They finally got off that hamster wheel and realized how calm and peaceful and serene, despite the global pandemic in the background, but how, free, how much more free they could be. And they
Right.
didn't want to give that back.
Right. And can you blame them? It's like, oh wow,
Oh,
I
not
actually
at all.
sit and pause. And that's not you and I both know that's not unique to the witnesses,
Hmm.
that, cults just keep people busy, keep their people busy, because if you give them too much downtime, they're gonna go, oh, I like this downtime.
Yeah,
So this is I'm relaxing and my body doesn't feel like it's in constant fight or flight mode or survival mode. And I get to think, pause and think about some things. So yeah, absolutely. That was a wake up call for a lot of people. I know a lot of
a
people.
lot of people.
I'm glad you brought that up because yes, a lot of people, that was the turning point for them. Just having that little break
Yeah,
did wonders. Yeah, having that physical, I would even say physical space away
yeah,
from Kingdom Hall.
yeah,
Just something, not walking into that building week after week, finally getting back and going, whoa, huh, what is this little feeling I have?
yeah,
I like this. Let me chase this feeling.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I
absolutely.
think uh, I'm not sure how. I can't say 100% how I would have reacted if I was still with ExJW when COVID happened, but I definitely think it would have made an impact. It would have made a big difference towards how I felt about the religion and my place in it.
Oh, absolutely.
I can't say definitively that it would have woken me up, but it would have done something.
Right, right. Yeah, so that was interesting. That whole Zoom call. That's a whole other thing. That's a whole other topic. How people were treated
Hmm.
through Zoom arrangement.
Yeah,
Watching meetings on Zoom. Yeah, it woke up a lot of people. Good.
yeah. I'm glad. I'm glad that it did. That's a silver lining in an otherwise, tragic situation.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. What advice would you give to somebody who could possibly be listening to this podcast and is still a JW and they're either having doubts or they've got questions? What advice would you give to somebody like that?
Well, first of all, we don't hate Jehovah's Witnesses, if you're listening to this. Apostates is just somebody who doesn't share their former religious beliefs. That's all it is. They just don't share they don't have the same religious beliefs. They just change their religious beliefs, but they make it sound like the boogeyman, oh, big bad apostate. We don't hate Jehovah's Witnesses. So whenever I get that, no, I personally take issue with the governing body, the leadership that is hurting the people, that is abusing and exploiting their parishioners. That's who we take issue with, not Jehovah's Witnesses as individuals. Do your research. I know this is going to be difficult. It's going to, like I said, there's the two types of witnesses, the true blue believer and the person who never really believed or whatever. There's different shades, there's nuance to it, but keep calm. Try to keep calm and do not being very articulate about this. Don't speak up. Don't say anything yet. Be careful and strategize. If you are truly waking up, you're going to freak out. I'm sorry to say this, you cannot trust your friends and family. You cannot. If they're indoctrinated, you cannot. You're going to either be talking to a brick wall or they will turn you in. They will rat you out. I'm sorry to say that, but your friend of 20, 25 years is not actually your friend if they're heavily indoctrinated. And even sometimes you get fringe witnesses that stick up for the organization. So do your research, listen to a variety of sources. JWFacts.com. JWFacts.com is a fantastic resource that Paul Grundy put together. That you can reference different Watchtower articles and see the hypocrisy and the contradictions. So that's important. Study the bite model by Stephen Hassan, so you can see for yourself the objective criteria that it is in fact a cult. We're not just being sensational when we say that. Oh, it's a cult. It's a cult. No, really, it is. It shuns people who leave. It's ripping apart families. You can't think and feel a certain way without repercussions. So know for yourself that you are in fact in a cult. But be careful who you speak to. Stay calm and strategize. And I don't know how that's going to look for different people. I can't give one answer to everybody, but just be careful who you speak to. Speaking to witnesses, you're going to either they're going to rat you out, or you're not going to get anywhere. Now to people who leave, eventually just leave, I would say, have fun, exercise your freedom. This is going to sound so cliche. Take your power back, but really take your power back. Watchtower took so much from you, especially born in Jehovah's Witnesses. Have fun, explore, do your thing. But this is one important piece of advice. If I could give anybody advice, try really hard to not become the thing that you hate. Try not to become an ideologue that gets stuck in a new echo chamber, in a new cult. Because we were primed for groups. Like I said in my videos, find your tribe. Be careful. That's all I would say. So be open to different viewpoints. Be open to hearing people who have different views than you. Show dignity and respect. Be capable of civil discussion and debate. And I say that because I've had people say, well, that's you. That's you, Bethany. You did become the thing you hate, because it would stop that, you have the YouTube channel or whatever. You hate Jehovah's Witnesses and you don't talk to your, I will say this. I have not heard my parents' voice in 8 years. I am shunned. But I would like to address those two things. One, like I said, we don't hate Jehovah's Witnesses. I take issue with the governing body and the leadership that's hurting the people. And two, as far as shunning my parents, you better check yourself. Or me reverse shunning, because I've had some people say, well, isn't that reverse shunning? Riley, I would say that there is a difference between shunning someone over ideological differences and not reaching out because I refuse to facilitate my own abuse. Because you and I have both seen it. We've both seen it on Reddit, the screenshots of people in texting wars with their family members. You see, long blocks of text from mom and dad. Come back to Jehovah. Satan's got you in his grip. Armageddon's around the corner. This very culty rhetoric shoved down their throat. And personally, I refuse to beg my parents to acknowledge my existence. I refuse to be lectured to every time I reach out. So, but here's the thing. I don't care if my parents are Jehovah's Witnesses. That's the catch. I don't care if my parents are Jehovah's Witnesses. I just want the freedom to be myself. So if my parents tomorrow contacted me and wanted to have a relationship, great. We're together again. I have my parents. You woke up, fantastic. Water under the bridge. I have a relationship with you again. And even if that wasn't the case, Riley, even if they remain Jehovah's Witnesses, I don't care. I just want the freedom to be me. So, I mean, like, oh, you want to, go out to service, your car's broke. Fine, I'll take you to the Kingdom Hall. You're going to meet Sister so-and-so at the local Panera. I'll take you there. I don't care. You can do you. My whole thing has always been, I just want to do my thing. Just don't shove your religious ideology down my throat. And I think that's what a lot of people want. They don't want to shun their family members back or, it's not retaliation. It's just you're protecting yourself.
Yeah.
So because I know, and then because some people will say like, well, love prevails. I'm not going to shun them, even though they're shunning me. I'm still going to reach out, and they get hit with very callous responses. Come back. Nope. Until you get right with Jehovah. So I see that. And personally, I just wasn't going to put myself through that. So I just refuse to I don't reach out because I refuse to facilitate my own abuse. But if my parents were to show up tomorrow, great. I love you. I care more about you than being right. I'd rather have a relationship with you. And if you want to be a Jehovah's Witness, that's fine too. I'm not trying to take your rights away. I just want mine. So, and regardless of whatever, comes of it, I still stand by my activism because there are people out there whose parents will never wake up or their family member will never wake up. And I still want to raise awareness about the abusive policies of the organization because people are killing themselves over being shunned. They have lost family members for decades. Their heads have been completely screwed up. They've developed serious depression and anxiety from their connections to the Jehovah's Witnesses. So I still stand by that. But anybody who's considering leaving, you have supportive people on the other side. You're going to have to grow. You'll grieve. You'll go through your own process. It'll look unique to you, but life gets better. It will be okay. We don't hate you. And do what you got to do. Do what you got to do. It's your life.
That's really good advice. That is very, very good advice. I 100% agree with you.
The Jehovah's Witnesses are not a quirky, harmless, clean-cut little fringe religious group. Oh, those guys, because sometimes I've spoken to people and, they say, oh, you came from a cult? Oh, really? You came from a cult? And then I tell them it's the Jehovah's Witnesses. They're like, oh, okay. I kind of get like a shoulder shrug. And it's because I've said this before. It's like the witnesses are not what I call a sexy cult. Meaning like they don't have attention grabbing, they don't have grabby headlines. You hear about certain, this cult did this and this. You don't really hear things out the way you just, they wear suits and they knock on your door, they stand at carts. I've heard things from dorky, quirky, fringe or whatever. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Yeah. For decades, this group has been destroying people's lives and families. Yeah. So my activism is very important to me because I want to remind people that no, this is not what they're presenting on the street is hiding something very sinister.
Yeah. And I've had that reaction myself many, many times. And I think one of the reasons why they're so able to fly under the cult radar is because of just how nice individuals are. They smile, they're friendly, they're pleasant, they're polite, they're helpful. It's all for an ulterior motive. I mean, we know because we were them.
Oh, absolutely.
But someone on the outside, that's all they see. So because they're not wearing white robes and sacrificing goats in the forest at night, it
Yes,
means
yes.
they're not a cult.
Exactly. You work with Jehovah's Witnesses. It can have beards now, and so the girl,
Yeah,
okay, cool, like, oh, you're just like another group. No, there's a lot more going on, and to your point, they're very friendly and smiling, and a lot of them are very genuine.
mm.
They're just
Yeah,
indoctrinated. They really truly think they're doing the right thing. So it's not even a slam on them. It's just like, no, you don't understand. This is part of a much bigger operation and situation than you realize.
yeah.
I'm not saying the person speaking to you is sinister.
Exactly.
That nice lady who's trying to preach to you, she's probably a lovely person, a lovely sister, but you don't know what she's representing. So
Exactly.
my whole thing with people is just an informed decision. Just be able to give your people, governing body, give your people the chance to make an informed decision without threatening them and using fear mongering. Let the public make an informed decision. That's really all it is.
It has been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Riley. I mean, really, truly, I appreciate what you're doing, your work. Keep it up. You're doing a fantastic job, and I'm just so happy you're free. And best of luck to you too. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. No, thank you. The pleasure is all mine. And thank you all for listening. I really hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as we both did. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, it has been a few weeks since my last episode, and the reason for that is partially because life has just gotten in the way. I have so many things going on at the moment, both personally and professionally, things that I really want to prioritize going forward. And as a result, I've actually decided that this will be the final episode of the JEXIC podcast. I feel like now is the right time for me to hang up my microphone for good. I started making ExJW content on YouTube way back in the summer of 2020. And my main purpose for doing so was to help other people, in a similar situation to me, people who were leaving the organization and were just trying to make sense of their new reality. I wanted to share what I was doing in the face of these challenges in the hopes that what I was doing could possibly help others as well. And if the feedback on my efforts that I receive is anything to go by, I would say that I have accomplished that. Of course, the work of ExJW activists is always going to be ongoing. There are people leaving the organization constantly, and such people do often need help. And due to the marvel of the internet, that help is now abundant, which is a good thing for everyone involved. Personally, I feel like that gives me the opportunity to pass the baton on to someone else without feeling like I'm leaving people in the lurch who really need my help. And when I started doing this, I knew right from the beginning that it wasn't going to be something that I would do forever. It's something that I would do for as long as I felt useful and able to do it. So this is going to be my final thank you for listening. I also want to thank Bethany for doing this last episode with me. It really was an honor. She's someone that I have admired for a very long time. So please show her channel some love. I'm going to leave a link to it in the description below. And I want to give an extra special thanks to everyone who's listening to this podcast and everyone who has supported my activism and my journey out of the Jehovah's Witness organization. There have been many highs and also some lows. It's really been an emotional roller coaster. But you know what? I really wouldn't change anything because I'm genuinely happy with where I am now. So that's it from me. Thanks again for listening. I hope you all have a great week.